Times have changed in modern-day Skyrim. In many ways, life is now different. The problems of the first, second, and even third eras aren't totally relevant to the fourth. People have developed new ideologies and understandings of Tamriel. As time goes on and the old generation passes, the new generation gets ushered in. The lore, history, and literature of yesterday doesn't always make its way to new years. Sometimes the old ways die off. They get replaced by logic and newfound understanding. However, it isn't always for the better. Sometimes there just might be more to the old ways than fairy tales, children's stories, and legends. Sometimes they might prove to be more truthful. In today's video, I wanted to go through the quests, Kyne's sacred trials, featured in the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. I'll play through the mission, listen to the dialogue, and discuss my experiences. Then at the end, I'll talk about any possible lore, theories, messages, and themes. This quest falls under a specific category of missions. It's one that's relatively hidden. For some quests in Skyrim, they practically jump into the Dragonborn's lap. You can hardly get away from them. However, for Kyne's sacred trials, it's most certainly off the beaten path. If you hadn't explored the wilderness of Skyrim, you'd likely never know that this one even existed. Just southeast of Iverstead, bordering the Jarrow Mountains of Cyrodiil, there's a lone shack up on the mountainside. The trek through the range might see the Dragonborn facing off against wild animals like wolves, bears, and sabercats, a foreshadow of what's to come. The small cabin on the slopes belongs to a hunter named Froki. It's most definitely a humble setup, with there not being much but the bare necessities. Inside the cabin, you'll find a grizzled old hunter named Froki Whetted Blade, as well as a child named Hamming. Chatting with Froki, he'll begin to rant about today's youth and their beliefs.
Well, look at this. Another city rat crawled outside the walls. I don't suppose you've come up here to tell old Froki about your supposed divines. They're stolen idols, imposter gods, sold by silver tongues. No thank you. Froki will not forget Kyne, or her sacred trials. It's an old Nord tradition, a test to prove your worth in the eyes of Kyne. Show that you're a hunter, and no simple butcher. Kyne teaches us to respect the beasts, and blesses the hunter who will face their champions. True Nord hunters are those who survive the trials. Do you think you're strong enough for Kyne's blessing? I would be glad to pass this tradition down. You must defeat guardian beasts, blessed by Kyne. I will anoint you with the symbol of the wolf, the crab, and the skeever. This will compel the guardian to appear when you reach his lair. Here's where you need to go.
Next, the Dragonborn can get some clarification on who or what Kyne is, although you'll have likely already recognized the name.
Those sycophants in the temple would call her Kinnereth, just a pale shadow of the truth, like all the temple divines. Kyne, blessed warrior wife, Shore's widow, sacred to any true Nord hunter. She's the mother of men and beasts, and her veil is the storm.
Now, this is just a neat aside, but before setting off, the Dragonborn can ask Froki about the boy, Hamming. When asked if he's the hunter's son, Froki says that he's actually his grandson. Apparently, his parents were victims of Helgen. Ever since their disappearance, Froki has been caring for Hamming. Turning to the boy, you may or may not actually remember him. He was there during Alduin's attack in the tutorial. Hadvar had screamed for him to get to safety. For the most part, Hamming is in good spirits, as good as they can be anyway. He's eager to get out into the world and to become an adventurer, sort of like the Dragonborn. In any case, it's now time to begin Kyne's trials. If anything, think of it like a test for the Dragonborn. Sure, they can defeat some of the most powerful opponents that Skyrim has to offer, but how well can they hunt? Popping open the map, there are currently 3 points of interest. The wolf, the mud crab, and the skeever, arguably all nuisance creatures for the game. The spirits can be tackled in any order, and for the most part, they fight like their corporeal counterparts. Of course, there are a few exceptions. Starting with the Guardian Wolf, it's located west-southwest of the Guardian Stones. You'll be able to find it just off of the cobblestone pathway. It's surrounded by a pack, but again, Most players should be able to one-shot the beasts with their mid-game gear. The interesting part about the spirits is that they drop the same kind of loot that their real-world counterparts do. Wonder what that implies about them then. The next guardian on the list, the Mudcrab, is located southwest of Swindler's Den. Riding across the rocky terrain, passing by all the other game and predators, you'll spot the giant crab off in the distance, and I do mean giant. The spirit of the Mudcrab, likely belonging to the lifeless husk in the nearby geyser, is about the size of 3 horses put together. It does take a couple more hits to take out than the regular crustacean, and it packs a heavier punch. However, it certainly is a marvel to fight against. The final guardian for this set of trials, the Skeever, is located southwest of Dawnstar. Just along the road leading out of town are the Windward Ruins. At its center is where the Dragonborn can face down the giant Skeever. This critter also appears to be oversized, but unlike the Mudcrab, it more or less shares the same stats as its fellow rodents. It's definitely a fun hunt, and if you decide to spice things up with specific weapons, or by being on horseback, it makes the trial all the more challenging. With all 3 guardians defeated, the Dragonborn can return to Froki's shack and receive the next set of instructions.
Maybe you're not so soft after all. Now you're ready for a real challenge. I'll anoint you with the symbol of the bear, the saber cat, and the mammoth. Tread carefully. These are mighty beasts. Here's where you need to go.
The hunt has escalated from nuisance creatures to more fearsome beasts. Even at higher levels, animals like saber cats and bears can prove to be worthy foes for the Dragonborn. Then of course, there's the mammoth. Those are some of Skyrim's apex beings. They can stomp all over the province's lesser animals and really only fall prey to hunters. Popping open the map, this time the waypoints have changed. Again though, the trials can be handled in whatever order you see fit. The Guardian Bear is located northwest of Cracktusk Keep, right by the Twilight Sepulchre. Part of the fun for this quest is adventuring through the wilds. It's more or less a mystery as to what you'll run into along the way. More animals, maybe some bandits, random NPCs, it's truly the full Skyrim experience. The Urson Guardian is more or less the same as any other bear, and defeating it should be no problem for mid to higher level players. The next spirit, the Saber Cat, is located on Skyrim's northeastern coast, southeast of Winterhold and across the fjords and icebergs of the province's frozen wastes. The spirit of the Saber Cat lies in wait for the Dragonborn. More or less similar to the wolf and bear, this guardian has the same stats as its corporeal counterpart. Really, it feels like this mission is meant to show the player where the various fauna of Skyrim resides within the province. It shows you where you can find mudcrabs, where wolves like to hunt, where the saber cats prowl, and which nooks and crannies the skeevers linger in. It's an excellent way to learn more about the wildlife and their habits. The final spirit guardian for this set of trials, the mammoth, resides just west of Lorea's farm. This great beast can be challenging for some players. It's fairly tanky, it can hit hard when it closes the distance. If you attack it via ranged weapons, you might be able to stun lock it behind some of the nearby rocks. This will allow you to pelt it with arrows over and over again until the great beast falls. Once all 6 of the guardians have been bested, the Dragonborn can return once more to Froki's shack and receive their final set of instructions.
You do Kyne proud. Only one challenge remains. Go and defeat the troll champion. Here's where you need to go.
There's one final guardian spirit for this quest. The troll is located east of Whiterun and south of Shimmermist Cave. Really, I'm a bit surprised that Kyne left the troll as the last challenge. Don't get me wrong, it's a fearsome beast and can easily wipe the floor with lower level players. However, if you know how to handle yourself, one measly troll shouldn't be an issue. I guess that's where the kicker comes in though. Entering Grey Mist Watch, a minute den on the face of a small mountain, there are not 1, not 2, but 3 trolls in here. The spirit troll behaves and fights like the rest of its kin. Really, it's the challenge of taking on the trio of beasts that separates a mere butcher from a true hunter. Personally, I don't think I've ever taken on 3 trolls at once, and while it wasn't difficult for my high-level character, it certainly was a novel experience that required a unique approach. After looting Grey Mist of its minor loot, the Dragonborn is free to return to Froki's cabin for the final time.
Then you finally know what it means to be a true hunter, in the Nord way. For this, you have earned the blessing of Kyne, and can count me as a friend.
As a reward for completing this quest, Froki hands the Dragonborn Kyne's token. It's an enchanted necklace that reduces damage taken from animals by 10% and enhances bow damage by 5%. From here, Froki and Hamming get dumbed down to simpler NPCs. There's no more meaningful dialogue that comes from the pair. From the way it's set up, it seems like Hamming is destined to become a hunter like his grandfather. Hopefully one day, he'll feel as though he's lived up to the memory of his lost parents. With that, thus ends the quest, Kyne's Sacred Trials. As mentioned during this mission, this story was simple. It was likely meant to show the player the different types of wildlife and fauna that are out there in Skyrim. First, you have the nuisance creatures. Wolves like to hunt in packs out in the meadows and clearings of Skyrim's wilderness. Then you have the mud crabs. They mostly stick to the rivers, ponds, lakes, and geysers of the province. Then there are the skeevers. While not inside of the ruins per se, they do like to linger around those enclosed, darker spaces. As for the size discrepancies with some of these guardians, I'd assume it's Kyne's, Bethesda's, take on making it more of a challenge, adding a bit of thrill and extra fun to the hunt. However, those sizes of creatures probably do exist somewhere within the span of Skyrim, as we do see the corpse of the giant mud crab in Whiterun Hold. As for the next 3 trials, bears can usually be found in dens and in the thick of the brush. A large population of saber cats can be found in Skyrim's tundra, and mammoths tend to roam the plains of the province's center. Then finally, trolls can usually be found in caves, swamps, the eastern reaches of Skyrim, and the province's alpines. This quest felt like it was intentionally designed to teach players how to locate and track down the various wild animals of the game, maybe for ingredients, pelts, or for separate reasons. It also felt like it had intentions of sending the player to the different regions of the province. You get to explore the forests, meadows, tundra, and caves of Skyrim. Now, interestingly, the unofficial Elder Scrolls pages suggests that players only embark on this mission at levels of 20 and above. I would have personally pegged it as a beginner's quest, as it does feel fairly introductory to the wildlife. Plus, the first few hunts are fairly elementary. Even the saber cat and bear battles can be simplified if you go about them the right way. However, I do understand it for the mammoth and troll fights. Mammoths can be very tricky to take on at lower levels, and even as a high-level dragonborn, trolls aren't always the easiest of foes either, especially without the use of fire. Add 3 trolls to the mix, that's certainly nothing to scoff at. I suppose by design, this quest does lean a little more towards the higher level crowds, as again, it is off the beaten path. If the starting point was by, say, Riverwood or Whiterun, places where new players get sent to right after completing the tutorial, then I would have said for sure it's for levels 1 to 5. However, the player has to feel comfortable enough to venture off into the wilderness. Not all newbies want to do that at the start of the game, especially when there are fearsome beasts out there like trolls, bears, and saber cats. Now, let's talk lore. What kind of lore is there for Kyne's Sacred Trials? Well, unfortunately, Froki doesn't give us all too much to work with. Really, we only get to deal with the hunter for this quest. Other than Hamming, there aren't any other people that the Dragonborn can interact with. What's more, most of Froki's dialogue is all about business, the Sacred Trials, and where to find each guardian. However, reading into some of his other dialogue, there are actually some interesting discussion points. I already talked about how Hamming is the same boy from Helgen who was helped by Hadvar. I think that detail is incredibly neat. He's a character that I almost completely forgot about. He plays such a minor role in the tutorial, but it was a very impactful moment. Hamming, the Dragonborn, and a few others were the only survivors of Alduin's attack. Even though Hamming puts on a hard shell, you can see that his main priority is to become a strong and hardy hunter. He doesn't want to be put in a scenario like Helgen ever again, at least while he's untrained and vulnerable. Now, as for Froki, you can pick up that he's an old school Nord. He believes in the traditional ways of living. A humble setup, you hunt for your food, you survive with your wits. In the beginning, he kept mentioning the goddess Kyne. If you're like me, you'd probably think, isn't that just Kinnereth? The answer is not as straightforward as it seems though. A lot of cultures in the Elder Scrolls have their own takes on the divines. For example, the Khajiit have their own beliefs on the deities, while the Nords have an entirely separate opinion. A lot of the deities share similar sounding names though, and their origins/personalities match as well. Most of the scholars believe them to be the same gods, just worshipped under different identities. You can see how Froki opposes this though, as he gets quite heated when Kyne is compared to Kinnereth. According to legend, Kyne is the mother of all Nords. She encompasses the ideal Nordic woman, strong, hardy, and caring. Where she crosses over with Kinnereth is that they're both believed to be the creators, mothers, and overseers of all animals, nature. I suppose when there are two legends that have identical names and similar backgrounds, they might get roped into being the same entity. However, as was evident with Froki, most traditional Nords believe Kinnereth to be a shadow of Kyne, almost like a demigod compared to Kyne's might and power. I'm sure it could be a tomato-tomato sort of thing to the modern-day inhabitants. But again, to the traditional Nords, those could very well be fighting words. It's pretty much like how the rest of the world sees Lorkhan. According to the accounts of the Elder Scrolls lore, in many ways he was this world's main creator. However, in the Nordic Pantheon, Shor is the one who takes up that mantle. Of course, the interesting part of Shor's lore is the creation of Sovngarde. We know through personal experience that Sovngarde is real. That means that some deity, on all accounts it's Shor, created it. It is more or less where noble and heroic Nords go when they die. This coincides with their traditional lore. It isn't where Khajiit and Argonians or Redguards and Imperials go, it's where the Nords go. If anything, this does bring merit to Shor and Lorkhan possibly being two different entities. So that begs the question then, are Kyne and Kinnereth two different deities? The answer is still unknown, but I think it allows for other possibilities and theories to flow in. The conclusion is not as cut and dry as some may believe it to be. In the end, to some, Kyne's sacred trial might feel like an introductory to Skyrim's fauna or a hunting challenge to others, but it also resembles much more than that. It shows that traditions are still strong in the hearts and minds of Skyrim's Nords. Some folks have not turned away from their ancestors' beliefs and ways of life. What's more, those methods and thoughts could be worth looking into, as you never know what kind of discoveries and revelations you can make. I'd love to know your thoughts on Kyne's sacred trials down below, and until next time, keep on adventuring.